Recently, I had one of my younger followers reach out to me to ask me a question, and it was such a good one. I asked him if it was okay if I shared it with all of you, and gave my answer as I think it's one that many other guys could benefit from. He told me he had recently gotten out of a bad relationship and had seen another podcast where they talked about how those who are in relationships tend to have better health outcomes. They tended to live longer. They had even talked about how it delays the onset of things like dementia and Alzheimer's as they are less lonely. And he wanted to know, what did I think? Do people have better health when they're in long-term relationships? And should that be a reason that we continue to seek someone to be in a relationship with? Now, before I give you the answer that I gave him, let's first talk about the belief that being in relationships is better for your health, especially for men. When it comes to health and longevity, the popular narrative often favors the idea that being in a relationship significantly improves both, especially for men. Something women and feminists love to point out to men. And yes, there is data to suggest some benefits, but it's not just for men, but for women as well. Something those feminists rarely, if ever, want to discuss. But even acknowledging that, we need to assess things a bit more. As the saying goes, the devil is in the details. And it's crucial that we take a long-term perspective and examine the nuances, especially since much of the research fails to account for critical factors that can alter the outcomes. Research often highlights that married men live longer and are generally healthier compared to single men. One study that the women have completely hung their hat on is one that was done by Harvard that showed married men had a lower risk of cardiovascular disease and were more likely to engage in preventative health behaviors. Thus, they were more likely to live longer than single men. The thinking goes that the supportive structure that wives give to their spouse, such as encouragement to seek medical care or maintain a healthier lifestyle, which is the reason, which in their eyes is the only reason, why married men live longer. First off, the idea that relationships always improve health outcomes has significant blind spots. For instance, when asking the questions to determine the outcome, one of the things that many researchers fail to ask or to determine is, are the relationships happy? And I'll get into more of that in a minute. In some, not all, but some of the studies, they outright avoid the topic altogether, because then they'd have to acknowledge that maybe being in a bad relationship, one that is full of tension, unhappiness, and all the other things that go along with it, would likely result in lower longevity. Another factor that they scrupulously avoid in many cases is taking into account the effects that divorce has on men. They simply lump all unmarried men, especially the ones who are deep in family court custody battles, into the single category, and thus it significantly skews the data, if not outright manipulates it. Because when you look at the reality of the effect divorce has on men, their health, and thus their longevity, and then take into account things like the higher rates of stress-related behaviors among men who experience family-related trauma, such as losing access to their child after a divorce, then the numbers change, in some ways drastically. Yet that information is rarely factored in to longevity studies, because they know it will have an effect on the results, often results that they've predetermined they want to find. Men in divorces and other similar situations often face heightened risks of substance abuse, depression, and even unaliving themselves. A CDC report revealed that divorced and separated men have an unaliving rate that is nearly 39% higher than their married counterparts. In fact, 40% of all unalivings are directly or indirectly attributable to family court and divorce. You think that might be having an effect on men's longevity, especially when you consider married versus single? Add to it the likelihood that men will have increased usage of alcohol and drug abuse. They'll tend to overeat, And they'll have other risky behaviors that men often turn to post-divorce as they try to cope with the loss of their children, all of which have an effect as well. Yet I've never seen a single longevity study that thoroughly examined that part of the equation and accounted for it. Ignoring these realities complicates the data and creates an overly simplistic narrative that relationships are always good for men. Oh, and it's funny how they never mention that for women, being in a relationship also correlates with some health benefits, such as lower rates of chronic illness and better mental health, especially in old age. Oops. Another factor that plays a role that often goes unaccounted for is stress, which again has a significant role in determining health outcomes in relationships, indeed in health as a whole. As I mentioned earlier, while a stable and supportive relationship can act as a buffer against chronic stress, a toxic or high conflict relationship will likely lead to the exact opposite. And chronic stress is linked to heart disease, diabetes, and even the development of things like dementia and Alzheimer's. Studies also suggest that loneliness and isolation also increase the risk of cognitive decline in older age. But then again, so can the stress of an unhealthy relationship. Thus, for men especially, this means that the quality of a relationship matters far more than the mere presence of one. Being in a stable, loving partnership can reduce stress and provide a sense of purpose, which contributes to better outcomes in aging. However, the detrimental effects of a strained relationship, especially when compounded by events like divorce or custody disputes, cannot and should not be ignored. Yet, that's exactly what most of these studies do. And let me take a moment to delve further and address another area where relationships do seem to be having clear benefits, which is protecting against dementia and Alzheimer's disease. It's something I've been spending time researching myself as it's prevalent in my family, and thus something I do need to be concerned about. Research does indicate that married individuals are less likely to develop these conditions compared to their single counterparts. But to be truthful, it's way too soon to tell exactly why that is. Preliminary data indicates it may be due to the mental stimulation and emotional support that comes from a close partnership, as well as the encouragement to stay socially active and physically healthy. That said, the benefits are not exclusive to traditional relationships, nor are they exclusive to men. Single men who cultivate strong friendships, maintain active lifestyles, and find purpose in their lives often exhibit similar protective effects. It's the connectedness, not necessarily the romantic relationship, that appears to matter most. Which brings me to another point, which is one today's modern women gleefully like to spout, as if it's something they should take credit for and be proud of, which is their belief that women are happier single while men benefit far more from relationships. Again, this idea is overly simplistic and doesn't hold up to scrutiny. Women are far more likely to be treated for depression, anxiety, and other mental health conditions at far higher rates than men across all age groups, whether single or partnered. This suggests that their well-being isn't necessarily improved by being single, an inconvenient fact that most women don't know, and even when you point it out to them, refuse to acknowledge or believe. That said, we would be remiss if we didn't acknowledge that in some ways for men, the stakes are often different. Social isolation is a significant risk factor for mental health issues, and men are far less likely than women to maintain strong social networks outside of a romantic relationship, something that is most especially true after a divorce, when the woman will often try and break any bonds the man had with their friends and family, and most especially so with the children. Again, that's something women don't want to acknowledge, but it's a reality nonetheless. This may be why single men report higher levels of loneliness and depression, especially post-divorce, and thus it would also have an effect on their longevity. So for the 90% of you listening to this who are men, the key message isn't that you must be in a romantic relationship to live longer or be happier. In fact, as more and more men are finding out, not being in one is proving to lead them to having a happier, healthier life, one with significantly less stress. The key instead is to focus on cultivating a life of quality connections, one with meaningful purpose. Yes, a healthy relationship can certainly be a boon, but a bad one, or the fallout from one, can have long-lasting negative effects. So to answer the young man's question, don't let the potential benefits of a long-term relationship on your health be the sole determining factor. Invest in friendships, in maintaining your physical health, and building resilience. Focus on things that you want to do and what you want to accomplish. And if that includes a relationship, awesome, that's fine. But make sure it's a good one, a healthy one. And if you're in a relationship, focus on making it a source of mutual support and growth, one with a partner who caters to your wants, your desires, your needs, as much as you cater to theirs. One who doesn't make it all about her and who loses her mind if the dishes aren't done or the towels aren't folded right. And if you're not in a healthy relationship, a happy one, you need to be honest with yourself and ask, is it worth it? Is it worth my health, both mental and physical? Is it worth losing years off my life? Remember, in the end, your health and happiness are completely within your control. The decisions you make each and every day will determine where you're going to end up. Gentlemen, the bottom line is this. Don't buy into the myth that being single condemns you to worse outcomes. But also, don't ignore the importance of connectedness in your overall well-being. Because in the end, that is what really will go a long way toward determining your longevity. Hey, brothers. Are you, like so many of us, feeling the weight of the world on your shoulders? Are you struggling to find a place where you can speak openly without fear of judgment? A place where you can feel safe talking about the issues that you're facing in your life? Well, we've got just the thing for you. The Brotherhood of Men over on Patreon. The Brotherhood is a private community dedicated to supporting and empowering men in today's society. The Brotherhood is a safe space, no chicks allowed, where men can talk about their struggles, share their stresses, and get the support and help they need without having to worry about it coming back to bite you in the ass. As a member, you'll also get early access to podcast episodes and other videos. Access to exclusive member-only videos where I talk about some of the issues that men face, as well as give you tips and tricks you can use in your life to make it better. And from time to time, you'll get exclusive access to what's going on behind the scenes and things that I'm working on to help raise awareness on men's and boys' issues. And that's not all. You'll get discounts on merchandise and early access to books and other materials designed to help you with the challenges that men and fathers typically face. And stay tuned for our upcoming monthly newsletter, which will feature articles from experts in family law, mental health, and more. We're even going to share inspiring stories of men who've overcome their struggles. So why wait? Join the Brotherhood of Men today and start your journey towards support and empowerment. Click the link below in our show notes to sign up. I can't wait to welcome you to the Brotherhood, and I'll see you there.